Hey, this is Dennis from Refused. You're watching Heavy New York. Check it out.
Heavy New York!
What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York. This is our first ever interview at Brooklyn Steel. We are finally here, and we got Dennis of Refused. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's so great to have you here. So your newest album, War Music, came out in 2019. It's the first record since Freedom, which came out 4 years before that.
Yep.
A lot has happened. You're on a new label now. So did you consider War Music just picking up where you left off after Freedom, or do you think that this is almost kind of like a new start for Refused in a way?
I mean, I think it's neither. I think it's... sometimes you want to reboot yourself and be kind of, as you said, we got a new label, we got a new management, and it's like a little bit of a new direction. But I think you land somewhere in between, because everything you do is a continuation of everything you've done, but it's also a reaction of things you've done before. So I think that we did Freedom in a very specific way, and War Music became a record that was done in a very specific way, but almost the opposite of how we did Freedom. Because of Freedom. So it wasn't like we're like, oh, let's have a new start, or I mean, it's an arc of a creativity that the way we did Freedom and the way it turned out, and the way some of the songs turned out inspired War Music to become what that became.
Awesome.
Yes, but it is. I mean, sometimes you need to clean the slate of as I said, like a new label, new management, kind of like reboot the system a little bit. Like creativity, it's always the same process. It's the same arc your entire life.
Yeah, of course. Well, I've always thought that Refuse had a lot of different styles and a lot of different sounds. Like, there's elements of art rock, post-hardcore, some real heavy stuff. But so is it fair to say you like to experiment with your sound as much as possible? Or maybe in your career there's kind of like a formula that you stick with?
I would say it's a little bit of both, because I don't think intentionally it's not like oh, we're going to be experimental, but it's more like the palette that we work from because of who we are and because of our influences. So I think that for us, we don't see it as necessarily like, I mean, we know. So here's the thing: we know what Refused is. Like in our mind, we have a very clear idea of our language, musically and lyrically, and everything that goes around with that. But that box that is Refused leaves us a lot of space to sort of do what we want to do with Refused. So I think it's we don't intentionally say like, oh, we have to experiment. We have to be an experimental band. It's more like that's the way we look at music. That's the way we create art. And if you create more art, you have to have an open mind. And you have to be ready to challenge yourself and ready to challenge the perception of what you want to do or who you want to be. So it's not so much being experimental for the sake of being experimental, but just like that's how we view music.
Yeah. Now, do you need to hear music before you lay down lyrics, or could a concept maybe also determine the outcome of the music itself?
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit of both. A lot of times Chris and David writes music, and then they'll send me instrumentals, and I'll come up with words or like patterns that work with the music. But sometimes I write lyrics, and then when you have ideas, I'm like, oh, these words would fit for this song, So it's a little bit of both. I mean, it depends on how creative you are, basically. But this record was different because it was like, when we did Freedom, me and David collaborated a lot on the lyrics and collaborate a lot on like how we approach. And for Freedom, we a lot of the time was spent like really talking about the lyrical content, like in the way where we all sat down and we did mind maps of all the songs. Like this song is about this, and then we started writing down like ideas. And we spent a good 6 to 8 months writing the lyrics and really and then on this record, a lot of the lyrics are written. We did the whole approach where they tracked the song, and I had a vague idea what I wanted to do, and then we met in the studio and we wrote a lot of stuff like on the fly, which we never done before, which was interesting because we complement each other pretty well. But I mean, there's always an idea like this is what this song is going to be about, and then So you have like a half of a verse and you have a chorus, and then we just sat down and we're like, okay, let's write this. And then we sat there for like 2 hours, and I did some vocals, and we sat back down like, yeah, that's good, but maybe change this. And so this record was very different. I mean, it was way more. The way we wrote lyrics and the way we approached it was way more spontaneous than the freedom was very much like
concrete.
Yeah, well, we spent so much time on the lyrics that sometimes I think they went above people's heads because we're like, oh, we're so fucking clever, and then people like, we don't know what you're singing about. But so this one, it feels a bit more immediate just because it was written that way. It was like, here's a song, like, what are we singing about? And then like, oh, let's record it, and then we recorded it, and then like, oh, yeah, that's great, So it's a bit more immediate and a bit more direct.
Yeah. Do you like to leave the lyrics open to interpretation, or is the goal for Refuse to try to maybe get the listener to see things from your own point of view or inform them on a certain subject?
I mean, ideally, you want lyrics to be something that people can sort of make up their own mind about. But the way we write with Refuse, it's not like that. It's pretty clear in every song what it's about. It's pretty in your face. But I think that's the language of Refuse. I think that's the language. I mean, we grew up on punk rock and hardcore, and it wasn't supposed to be poetic. It wasn't supposed to be like metaphorical. Maybe it could be this, maybe it could be that. It was like, this is what we're saying right in your face. And I think, especially with this new record, I mean, it's so abrasive and it's so confrontational that it's hard for people to, have their own interpretation of what we're saying.
Yeah.
But I mean, ideally, a lot of music or a lot of art that you should create should be able to apply to numerous things.
Yeah.
But a record called War Music with songs like Economy of Death, I Want to Watch the World Burn, you're like, yeah, that is what it is,
Well, the reason why I ask is because I discovered you guys when I was very, very young. And at the time, like, I didn't understand, like, Rage Against the Machine, for example, they're obviously a political band, but
yeah.
I was listening to Killing in the Name, singing along to that when I was like 5 years old, and like, but like, I didn't know what politics were or anything like that. So that's why I like ask if like maybe that there's maybe an interpretational element behind it.
No. Yeah. I mean, the second record we put out, it's called Songs to Fan the Flames and Discontent, which is the International Workers of the World song pamphlet from the 30s. And we're just like, that's the band we've always been. Like, since we started, we're like, we're going to be super political. We're going to talk about these ideas and these issues. And they continue on to today. And I mean, the world we live in, even more so than ever, it's important to talk about these things. And sometimes it is interesting because sometimes maybe some parts of Shape of Punk to Come is a bit more open. Then you sometimes see people online like, oh, fuck, these guys are going all political. And I'm like, wait, I thought that Shape of Punk to Come, the first line of the record is I got a bone to pick with capitalism and a few to break. I think that's like the first line of that record. How can you miss that we're like an insanely political band?
Yeah.
But here's another thing, though. You decide what you like in music. Mm-hmm. So no matter how much like we're these anti-capitalist, rock band that has all these political ideas, radical leftists, that's what we are. But I love the idea that people can still love our band and not be affiliated politically.
Yeah.
And I think that's a beautiful thing about art. I mean, ideally we'd be like, oh, you love the music, you love the, guitars, you love the vocals, you love the lyrics. But the cool thing about art is that you pick and choose what you want to love about a band. I mean, you can love a band and be like, don't care for the politics, but I think, the songwriting is excellent, or, the drummer is amazing. So I think that's a cool thing. And I mean, it's something that you learn the hard way. Like, you can't force people to think, or you can't force people to react a certain way. Like you decide. I mean, some people come to the show and I do my speeches and they're like, yeah, whatever, I don't care about the speeches, I want to see you rock out. And then some people come to the show and like, the speeches, that's the thing, So it's like, It's like you choose what you want out of what we're giving you. You know?
Yeah. When I saw you on the Deftones tour, I mean, I knew you guys were very political, but I didn't feel like, I felt like, okay, this is part of the act. This is part of the experience. I'm seeing a Refused performance.
Yep.
So this is what they do.
Yeah.
And now, one thing when it comes, I've always, it's kind of like two questions pertaining to this, because when you write political music, do you like look for inspiration? Like, is there a lot of research involved, or does like the political elements, is this like maybe also personal experiences that you've had?
I mean, both. I think that that the politics, if you want to write about politics, it should be anchored in your life so that you can actually sing about something that has affected you and something that's close to you. I think when you're younger, you have a tendency to sing about, I'm going to sing about this issue over here, and then there's no emotion to connect to it. But then on the other hand, I mean, as I said, with Freedom, we did a lot of research. Like a lot of the stuff, like we're sending articles back and forth. Me and David, I'm like, did you read this? And then we're sending like, oh, that's a good like thing that we could start writing around a song. So it's a little bit of both. But I do believe that if you can insert your own life or your own like experiences into a political idea, it makes it more tangible for people. Because it's not like, sometimes we border on just political theory, or we're just like, this could be like a a poorly written anarchist like textbook, but then sometimes you get that balance where it's like, well, people can relate to it in a different way. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, like I know that OTEP, her music's very political, but like it's her personal experiences and what she had to deal with. So I thought like, maybe, is there also research involved, or is it strictly your experience?
No, it's a little bit of both. But I mean, I'm the type of person that thinks that everything is political. Mm-hmm. Everything has a political agenda. And I mean, the idea of saying like, oh, we're not political, this is a super political thing to say, because then you're,
rebelling against that concept.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, politics is personal. I mean, even though it's research, or even though you have specific topics that you sing about, or specific topics that you read up about, it's a personal thing when you expose yourself to the world and be like, okay, here's what I think, here's my political ideas. And I mean, especially in a world that's so divided now, where people on the right are so angry, people on the left are angry, and there's very little understanding. So to come out and be this type of band, I mean, it's a good thing that we're older, and it's a good thing that we've done this for a long time, so it doesn't faze me that much when people get really angry about us being political.
You're at a metal show, people are going to be angry.
Exactly, yeah. But I mean, if you're a young person and you sort of start like, okay, I'm going to be political, and you get like an immense backlash online, you might be like, I'm not going to be political. That seems like a lot of trouble. But for us, it's like, it's almost like, me and David talk a lot about like, if there's no backlash online, then we're not trying hard enough, because it is like in my mind it's a confrontational thing. It's like we grew up on punk. We grew up on the idea that if you have something to say it loud. You don't necessarily need people to agree with you, but you want to start a conversation and you want to have a reaction from people.
You welcome open discourse.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about music and art, that in an ideal world it opens a conversation. It opens an idea. And I mean, sometimes when you're the most angry about something someone said, it's because it hits you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It makes an impact.
Yeah, you're like, oh, fuck that guy. And then you like start thinking like, oh, maybe, maybe I'm so, I'm angry because it struck a nerve,
That's how I feel about modern art. Like I see a piece of toilet paper like nailed to a piece of wood. I'm like, this is horrible. Like, why the fuck? And then all of a sudden, like, oh, it made an impact on me. Yeah. I have two more questions for you.
Yeah.
As somebody who has seen you live before on the Deftones show, like, I was very amazed just by the stage presence, like, I don't think there was a single static moment from any of you on stage, the way you guys moved around. Is there maybe a similar energy that you put into your live presence as you do when you're songwriting, or for you, it's a completely separate art altogether?
No, I think they're very connected. I think there's a language in the music that one of the important aspects of that is how it translates live. So one of the things we did when we wrote Freedom, a lot of that was, I mean, war music's also, I mean, it's very much a studio construction, but it's a studio construction based on touring on Freedom and kind of figuring out what songs work the best live. And Freedom was writing. I mean, when we did Freedom, we hadn't written music together for like 14 years. So that was a learning process. And you wrote a lot of songs, and you were in the studio and like, oh, this sounds great. But then a couple of those songs, you start playing them live, and you're like, no, this is not working. Like, you can't, like, it's not in your body the way it's supposed to be. And I mean, that's the thing for me as a performer. Like, music is in you, and if it's not in you the right way, then it doesn't. You can't feel it. You can't resonate with it. And I mean, that's a funny thing when you start playing new songs. I mean, it takes me 5 or 6, 7 shows to feel how the music translates to my movement.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a thing. Like, you want the songs that you write to directly translate to that energy that you have live. And I mean, I think especially War Music is a record that you could tell it's written in the idea of like, this is going to be played live. This is going to be, I'm going to be dancing to these songs, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was impressed. I was getting out of breath looking at you. I was in the front row. I was like, oh my God, how does he do that?
A lot of going to the gym and, you know.
I was about to say, well, playing live is a workout in itself.
It is. But then before you go on tour, you have to be prepared for like 1 hour and 10 minutes of just intensity, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And the final question I wanted to ask you is, you know, you're a very prolific artist. You know, you also play with Invasion, just to name one band out of the 27 that you're in.
Yeah.
When it comes to just making art with different people, is there maybe do you have to approach it differently? Is it a separate mind frame, or is there maybe a usual method behind the madness that ties all your work in together?
I mean, the thing that ties my work together is me, I think, you know, just my mind.
Same brain.
Yeah, same brain. But since the bands that I play in are they're quite specific. If you compare Refuse to Invasion, I got a project called Fake Names with some people here in New York, and they're very different. So you have to approach it, like, you have to go into certain mindset of being like, okay, now I'm writing for this band, or now I'm writing for this band. So it is a bit of like, you have to have a bit of a separation between the different things. I mean, there's spillover. There's always like, if you read my lyrics, you can see like there's an idea here in a Refuse song. That's also a little thing of that in that Invasion song, you know. So it flows a little bit, but it's like you try to. Here's the thing. I try to have different languages for the different projects, so you know when you're writing how to approach it, if that makes sense. I mean, Refused is very extrovert, violent, aggressive, confrontational, very direct. While Invasion has political elements, but it's more personal, it's more introvert, it's more moody maybe. And then Fake Names is more punk, and it's more, you know, so it's like you have all these different projects, and you have to find a language that fits the music, and then it's quite easy to separate them. Mm-hmm. But I mean, yeah, there's been times where it's like, you know, you're in the studio with one band, and then you're playing a show with the other band, and so it's like, you're like, oh wait, what band am I doing right now? Your mind is like, oh shit, okay, this is what's happening right now.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a, I mean, when you have this many projects and bands, sometimes it's a bit confusing.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. So before we go, I'd like to thank you so much for your time today. Is there just anything else with Refuse that you would like to promote? This will be uploaded by midnight, so if it hasn't been announced.
No, come out and see the tour. Well, I'll tell you this. People assume, like, when we got back together in 2012, we started touring, people assume that we're always touring. But I mean, this is going to be the only U.S. shows of 2020. I mean, 14 shows in America this year. That's just what it is. So if you want to see Refuse play War Music live, you better come and check it out.
Get your ass to the show.
Yeah, get your ass to the show, because who knows when we'll be back. And I mean, we want this to be exclusive for us. We want it to feel like when we're touring, it's a big deal for us. So we're not touring a lot. I mean, I think 2020, we're going to do 45 shows the whole year, maybe 50 shows. So it's not like, you know.
Leave people wanting more. That's
yeah, exactly. I mean, I know there's a lot of spots in the States where we're not hitting on this tour, but maybe next year.
You never know.
Never know. Yeah.
But thank you so much,
Thank
Dennis.
you. Thanks for having me.
Everybody, Dennis of Refuse, War Music. Get it now while supplies last forever. This is Alex from Heavy New York. We'll see you next time.